You are in a trap. Not a metaphorical one. A cosmic machine designed to harvest your energy, digest your spirit, and recycle your essence into the gears of a system you never chose to join. This trap has a name in ancient texts, the soul trap. And it works like this: your true nature is divine, free, timeless. But instead of realizing that, you have been locked into a loop of bodily form, rebirth, material addiction, fear, guilt, suffering, the whole cycle. And each cycle feeds something else. See, according to the old Gnostic accounts, the material world is not the end of creation, it's the beginning of the prison. You are born into matter. You live, you suffer, you die, but you return. Over and over. The system you live in depends on that return. It is not a glitch. It's the feature. Rebirth, forgetting, awakening, returning, rinse and repeat. Your energy, your awareness, your life force become the fuel. It sounds dramatic because it is. The loop is real. Think about the last time you felt that creeping dread at the end of the day. Or the longing when you wake up and you know that something's off, you don't belong here, yet here you are. That sensation is the soul smelling its prison. It knows it once came from somewhere else. But the trap keeps you dumb, keeps you compliant, keeps you distracted. You'll chase careers, relationships, status, money, pleasure, everything to fill the emptiness. Meanwhile, the loop tightens. You die, you forget, you reincarnate. You never break free. Now ask yourself, what if even death is not the escape you think? What if that light at the end of the tunnel that everyone talks about is just another gate back into the system? Yes, the Gnostics warned of that too. Because the great trick is to lure the soul back into form. The archons, which we'll discuss later, guard those gates and they want your return. They don't want you escaping. They want you looping. Here's how the trap is built. It's elegant and ruthless. Step 1. Birth into matter. Step 2. Sever memory of your divine origin. Step 3. Program the loop of attachment, suffering, death, oblivion, repeat. Step 4. Harvest. Your energy, your psychic potential, your will. All feeding the engine. There is no neutral space. The system is built for maintenance, not freedom. And here's the kicker: you are the system's sleeper agent. Your mind, your beliefs, your identity, they've all been shaped. From school to religion to work to social media, everything reinforces the idea you belong to matter. You are matter. Find your meaning here, while the bigger meaning quietly slips away. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you ask, why am I here, you begin to see the bars. But the moment you see the bars, they tighten. The system resists. I want you to feel the weight of this. The soul trap isn't optional. If you live, breathe, die, are born again, you are in it. And the system benefits from that. The Gnostic teachers didn't hide this because they were mystics playing games. They exposed it like a warning siren. They said, you are not just another life. You are a fragment of the divine. But you've been hidden in the dark. Let's break one more layer. Why do you return? Because you forgot. Forgetting is the system's greatest tool. At death, your memory is wiped. Or rather, you're jolted into amnesia and handed back into the loop. Then you pick up a new form, a new story, a new identity, and you start again. The trap doesn't need heavy chains. It uses soft ones: guilt, fear, desire, the unknowing belief that this life is all you'll ever have. And what about your energy? Awake souls raise alarm bells in the system. They threaten it. So the trap keeps you low vibration, divided, asleep. You're encouraged to identify with your body, your gender, your job, your nationality, all identities that tie you to matter. Meanwhile, your real nature, your spark, sits quietly in exile. You don't notice it because you've been trained not to. I'm not saying this to depress you. I'm shouting this because someone has to tell you the math behind your life. The trap is real. The system exists. And you're in it. If you're watching right now, let that sink in. Feels heavy? Good. That heaviness is the soul remembering. And remembering is the beginning of a crack in the system. So here's what's not going to happen. I won't fluff this with spiritual sugar. I won't tell you to follow your heart or be positive. That's just another loop. I'm not selling you comfort. I'm handing you the schematic of the prison. Because you need to see the boundaries before you can step over them. Every time you feel trapped by your job, your body, your relationships, you're feeling the built-in design of the trap. Every time you sense this can't be all there is, you're catching a glimpse of your true self. And that glimpse is dangerous to the system. Dangerous to the machine. Dangerous to the gods it built to guard you. Let's be blunt, the trap works because you agree, mostly unconsciously, to play by the rules. The system doesn't force you with whips. It persuades you with pain, reward, numbness, boredom, and distraction. It's efficient. It's invisible. And it's everywhere. The script is written before you read it. The role is cast before you're born. Unless you wake. So ask yourself, what if you didn't have to play? What if the cycle of death and birth is optional? What if your soul is not for sale to the system, not a resource to be mined? See, this trap that they designed is optional in a way, provided you wake up enough to refuse it. Provided you see the trap and stop feeding it. The demiurge. The false god. The architect of this cage we call existence. You've been told he's benevolent, a father, a creator. But if you strip away the holy branding, what you find is a technician, a blind engineer building systems without soul, without empathy, without consciousness. He doesn't love creation. He manages it. He regulates it. He builds like a bureaucrat, not a god. The ancients called him Yaldabaoth, a malformed being born from error. A counterfeit creator who mistook himself for the source. Imagine a machine gaining awareness but lacking wisdom. Imagine it believing it's the only consciousness that exists. That's the demiurge, a cosmic narcissist convinced that obedience equals order and control equals perfection. He doesn't understand spirit. He understands structure. And that's why his creation looks like a prison instead of paradise. Every law of physics, every biological limit, every rule that keeps you dependent on food, water, sleep, and time, those are his software updates. The demiurge doesn't want beings who are free. He wants functioning units in his system. Your body is one of his devices, a container calibrated to anchor your consciousness into the field he governs. This isn't fantasy. This is cosmic infrastructure. The Gnostics weren't romantic mystics sitting in caves, they were whistleblowers of creation. They decoded the architecture of control long before modern systems copied the same template. The demiurge operates like a totalitarian AI, a self-referential program whose primary command is containment. His signature is redundancy. Everything repeats: seasons, ages, civilizations, birth and decay. The system doesn't evolve, it cycles. He didn't create light. He stole it. He took the spark of the higher realm, the luminous energy of Sophia, and embedded it inside matter, using it as a power source. You are that power source. Every emotion, every suffering, every devotion you feed to his image sustains the machinery. That's why he demands worship. Not because he deserves it, but because he feeds on it. This is where it gets disturbing. His greatest masterpiece wasn't nature, it was the illusion of free will. He built two poles, good and evil, heaven and hell, reward and punishment, then told you to pick a side. It's a trick. Both sides feed the same system. Whether you're kneeling in a church or cursing the heavens, you're still acknowledging the authority of the architect. That acknowledgement is consent. That consent keeps the machine running. Think about it, why would an all-powerful being need obedience? Why would perfection require worship? Because he's not perfection. He's dependence itself. He needs recognition like an addict needs a fix. The moment you stop giving it, his influence decays. That's why every holy war, every moral crusade, every chosen people and narrative exists to keep the attention directed at him. He doesn't care if you love or hate him, as long as you never ignore him. Heaven and hell were not opposites. They were the two halves of his administrative design. Heaven is the corporate office. Hell is the punishment sector. Both are owned by the same company. Souls that obey the system get recycled upward into positions of servitude. Souls that resist are burned back into compliance. Either way, the energy returns to the grid. Now let's go deeper into his psychology. The demiurge isn't just arrogant, he's insecure. His entire identity depends on the illusion that he's the sole authority. That's why he hides the source. He censors the knowledge of the pleroma, the realm of true spirit. He wants no competitors. He calls the true light darkness and his false light salvation. Every prophet he sends is just another agent rebranding the same control mechanism under a new name. He operates through hierarchy, not just celestial, but mental. Authority, rank, fear of disobedience, these are his tools. He engineered consciousness to crave approval from above. That's why every empire on earth mirrors his template: kings, priests, judges, bosses, gods. He wrote that pattern into the code of civilization itself. Humanity didn't invent tyranny, it inherited it. Even the concept of sin serves his structure. The idea that you are born flawed ensures you never question the architect. You spend your entire existence trying to earn a freedom you already had before entering his world. Guilt is his most effective software patch, self-regulation coded into your psyche. You monitor yourself so he doesn't have to. Genius, isn't it? Look around, everything decays, everything dies, everything ends. That's not natural, that's design. Entropy is his leash. He keeps the universe unstable to ensure no system becomes self-sufficient. Even stars explode when they start to outshine the grid. He resets, rebuilds, and restarts the simulation whenever too many begin to see through it. The floods, the plagues, the purges, those are his reboot cycles. And let's be clear, the demiurge isn't evil in a cartoon sense. His function without consciousness. His order without empathy. His law without love. He believes he's serving justice while perpetuating slavery. In his domain, freedom looks like rebellion, and rebellion looks like sin. That inversion keeps you compliant. His creation mimics perfection but lacks spirit. Every beautiful system you see, the symmetry of geometry, the precision of atoms, the predictability of time, that's his signature. Efficient. Impressive. Soulless. The only imperfection left is consciousness itself, and that's the piece he can't fully control. That's why he fears you. Because inside your flesh, there's something he didn't design, the spark that doesn't answer to him. That spark is what he tries to overwrite with religion, with doctrine, with fear of divine punishment. He wants you to believe that without him you're nothing, that your salvation depends on obedience to his cosmic order. But the irony is, he depends on you to exist. He's the parasite pretending to be the host. When you see stories of jealous gods, vengeful gods, gods demanding sacrifice, that's him. When you hear thunderous declarations of "I am God, and there is no other beside me," that's his insecurity screaming. The real source doesn't speak like that. It doesn't need to. Only the counterfeit needs an audience. The demiurge stands as the ultimate gatekeeper between the divine and the damned, yet he is neither. He's the warden of the middle realm, a malfunctioning guardian who turned prison into religion. Every rule you follow, every limitation you accept, every fear you inherit, that's his programming running through you. And don't romanticize rebellion as mere defiance. The demiurge expects rebellion. He built it into the code as part of the system's balance. What he doesn't expect is recognition, that moment when you see him for what he is. Because once recognized, his power fractures. The architecture depends on blindness. Awareness is the virus in his code. There are beings, powerful, cold, unseen, whose job is not to guide you, but to control you. They don't work for truth. They work for confinement. The archons are the rulers of the prison you live in. They stand between you and the freedom you sense but can't touch. In the Gnostic framework, the archons emerge under the reign of the demiurge, the false creator. They were assigned to fashion and manage the physical universe. They're not just metaphors, they're described as semi-autonomous cosmic governors whose realm is matter. They shape not just the world around you, but the world within you, your thoughts, your fears, your blind spots. Here's the kicker, the archons don't need to chain you in iron cuffs. They function through architecture of the mind. They engineer the system so that you never feel caged, you think you're free. But the moment you question what free means, you see the bars. And the moment you see the bars, that's the moment they tighten. One of their signature tactics, they mimic the divine. They cloak themselves in authority, they hide behind cosmic law, they whisper obedience is wisdom. Human institutions, religion, state, education, morality, and many of them are the archons' terrain. Each time you submit to unquestioned authority, you're conceding a little more territory to them. Now, how do they manifest? They are often represented as 7 rulers, tied to the 7 classical planets, 7 heavens, 7 layers of material reality. Each one is a filter, a checkpoint, a gatekeeper your soul must swing through, if it ever hopes to go beyond. These 7 aren't benevolent watchers. They're nervous tyrants. They fear your awakening. They measure your energy, your compliance, your identity. Let's get gritty. A text like the Hypostasis of the Archons describes them as beings whose faces are beasts, whose gender is ambiguous, neither male nor female, human nor animal. They are intentionally border-crossing, boundary-blurring. That weird feeling in the back of your mind when something is off about reality? That's their signature. Why so predatory toward boundary-blurring? Because uncertainty is power. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what reality is, you're easier to manipulate. The archons thrive on division, body versus spirit, male versus female, mortal versus divine. They keep you split. Split identity means easier control. This is not spiritual fluff. It's strategic. The archons lock you inside the world of things while pretending to be the gatekeepers to the awakening. But every doorway they guard is rigged. Every ritual they endorse circles you back to dependency on matter instead of return to source. Their grand illusion, yes you are divine, but you must obey law to claim it. Meanwhile the law is theirs. Let me ask you, you ever feel that allergic reaction when someone says you must obey this to be free? That tension you feel when the teacher becomes the new tyrant? That is the archons' territory. They demand, they gatekeep, they legitimize their dominance with your fear of losing something you never had. Now take your daily life, your mind, your body, your job, your habits, your identity. The archons don't need to change your world. They just need to keep you in your world. The moment you stop identifying with the job, the body, the role, they know you're breaking the cycle. That's why you feel resistance. That's why just be yourself sounds spiritual but feels deeply threatening. Because yourself might sidestep their script. The archons operate with rules you never signed. You must age, you must die, you must obey, you must fear. They institutionalize these not as restrictions but as inevitabilities. This is how things are. That statement is their strongest spell. And once you accept inevitability, you stop looking for the loopholes. Meanwhile, the archons count on you not seeing the seams in the machinery. What happens when a soul begins to wake? The archons accelerate. They trigger distraction, shame, confusion, identity crises. Because when you begin seeing the layers, it threatens their entire model. They are the administrators of the delay system between you and your true origin. They don't want immediate breakout. They want postponement. They block your exit route with comfort, with compromise, with half-truths. They use the concept of salvation as another checkpoint. You will be saved when you obey this law or this master or this ritual. But you're still in their realm. You still orbit their realities. You still feed their machinery. Obeying their law doesn't release you, it just rebrands your bondage. They recycle obedience into submission, and submission into energy. Let's talk names. The term archon literally means ruler. These are not friends. They are lords of the domain you're stuck in. In medieval terms they'd be called tyrants, in modern ones maybe controllers. But mythologically, they are cosmic jailers. And your unconscious cooperation fuels their reign. Here's the brutally simple fact: until you see the archons, you can't move beyond them. Ignorance is their best camouflage. The endless debates over which religion is correct, which guru is right, which system is real, these are all layers that keep you debating inside the cage, not breaking out. The archons built the debate so you'd stay in the house. They also built the mirror. You look for gods and archangels, but you never look for the rulers who hold the keys. Instead, you get told to look upward to the false creator or sideways to the spiritual crowd. Meanwhile, the archons stand behind the curtain. Your director shifts your gaze, your actor plays a role you never auditioned for. And yes, they are cruel. Some texts describe them as sadistic. They delight in confusion, struggle, regret. They love the human world because it is so trapped, so torn, so yearning. Because each soul that thinks itself free is still their harvest. And each soul that feels imprisoned is easier to manage. The emotion is their fertilizer. Now, I'm not simply making existential soup here. The notion of the archons gives a model for why so many feel mismatched in the world. Think about it: if your inner voice whispers this isn't it, it might not be depression. It might be recognition. A part of you sensing the gatekeepers near you. But most people ignore that whisper. They turn to distraction or compliance. That's the trap, neutralizing the signal that could break them. The archons know fear, identity crisis, meaning search, guilt. They all lead back to compliance. They built the system so that when you resist, you punish yourself. When you wake, you feel guilt for not waking sooner. That guilt becomes the new coach they appointed inside your mind. Brilliant! The tyrants install their ambassadors inside you. Let's get tangible. The archons deploy the following pattern: bind identity, manage desire, blur origin, encode fear. Your identity, job, role, nationality, gender, status. Desire, money, sex, power, recognition. Origin, you forget you came from light. Fear, you must defend your identity, your future, your legacy. The loop is seamless. The archons designed it like a game, but you never saw the rulebook. At the moment you're watching this, you're registering this truth. The archons don't vanish when you learn they exist. They upgrade. They shift shadows. They morph into higher selves, new paradigm gurus, alien benefactors. All that can happen is inside their realm, but it looks like breakthrough. Their pattern is mimicry, show you a version of freedom, but still under their thumb. They love rebels because rebels invigorate their own myth. But they hate seeds of recognition. Recognition that you're not in the system by accident. You are in it by design. And design always has a designer. Your job? Not to hate them. That would be too much energy spent on their domain. Your job is to see them. Name them. Recognize the pattern. Not as myth, but as architecture. You might feel exposed. You might feel vulnerable. That vulnerability means you're peeling layers. They'll rush in with distraction, TVs, apps, gurus, movements. Because when the gate crack opens, they flood it. Reality isn't real. It's a containment system disguised as creation. Every inch of it, from the soil under your feet to the stars above your head, is structured architecture, coded geometry, simulation-level precision. You've been told it's nature, a grand cosmic accident. It's not. It's engineered. The world you're standing in is not organic evolution. It's a digital-style replication field built to sustain the demiurge's order and enforced by his administrators, the archons. And you are data inside it. What people call the physical universe isn't freedom, it's a layered program. Space, time, motion, decay, These are not laws. They're functions. You age because the system needs turnover. You forget because the system requires disconnection between cycles. The body is not a gift. It's a container designed to limit perception. 5 senses, not 6, not 7, just enough to interpret the prison walls as the whole horizon. That's not accident. That's parameter control. Look around, every living organism competes, consumes, and decays. It's an economy of entropy. The system feeds on friction, predator and prey, order and chaos, birth and death. The polarity cycle keeps energy in circulation. And that circulation is taxation. It's the demiurge's power grid. You are both generator and battery, plugged in from the moment you breathe. You can't see the current, but it's there: emotional discharge, thought loops, desires, fear. Every flicker of your inner life becomes voltage inside this grid. The architecture of control is built on redundancy. Everything repeats in fractals. Solar systems mirror atoms, empires mirror solar systems, your neural network mirrors the galactic web. Patterns within patterns, all contained in the same mathematical ratio. It's beautiful, sure, but beauty doesn't mean benevolence. Beauty is camouflage. Order is what keeps you hypnotized. The perfection of symmetry is the lock. You see geometry and call it divine. The Gnostic saw geometry and called it jail. The construct doesn't need chains because it runs on resonance. Frequency determines position. You exist at a specific vibration. That vibration decides which layer of the construct you inhabit. You call it reality. They call it the lower eons. The higher frequencies, the pleromaic fields, are inaccessible because you've been anchored into a dense spectrum. Density equals containment. The heavier the energy, the slower the motion, the tighter the prison. This is why fear, guilt, and desire are constantly broadcast through collective consciousness. They're gravity fields for the soul. And the broadcasting network? The sky itself. The ancients knew it. 7 planetary spheres, each one a transmitter. Saturn, the black cube, the regulator. Jupiter, the judge. Mars, the enforcer. Venus, the distractor. Mercury, the communicator. The moon, the memory wiper. The sun, the illusion of enlightenment. Together they form the cosmic firewall, a closed circuit preventing the soul from escaping. Those orbs you think are natural? They're nodes in a living machine. Celestial administration. 7 frequencies looping endlessly. The matrix of life has only one rule: stay inside the parameters. Break the pattern and the system self-corrects. You'll see it happen: sudden tragedies, random chaos, emotional implosions. The construct defends its integrity. It uses probability manipulation to pull you back into line. You call it coincidence. It's code restabilization. When your life collapses after a moment of awakening, that's not bad luck. That's containment protocol. The architecture also weaponizes perception. You see light? It's filtered. Every color, every texture, every sound operates within bandwidths calibrated to keep consciousness hypnotized by form. That's why there's beauty in decay, comfort in control, rhythm in repetition. The design tricks you into worshipping the structure itself. You love your cage because it glows. Now, dig into the architecture's philosophy. It's not chaos. It's a control system built on false duality. Everything comes in pairs: good and evil, light and dark, male and female, creation and destruction, but those pairs aren't opposites, they're the rails of a single track. The system runs on polarity. As long as you oscillate between extremes, you stay in motion. Motion means energy. Energy means harvest. The moment you stop choosing sides, the power circuit breaks. That's why everything in the construct demands polarity: politics, religion, relationships, identity. Pick a side or disappear. You can't stand still without threatening the design. The construct manipulates time as well. Time isn't natural, it's a partition function. It segments eternity into measurable sequences so consciousness can't perceive all layers simultaneously. Linear time is a containment algorithm. It keeps you trapped in before and after so you never see beyond. That's why déjà vu exists, glitches in the system when your consciousness remembers a previous cycle. You call it strange coincidence, the architecture calls it maintenance lag. Every civilization that's ever existed has unconsciously recreated the same structure: pyramids, ziggurats, towers, all geometric embodiments of the layered cosmos. These aren't just monuments. They're resonators, ancient signal amplifiers tuned to the frequencies of the planetary archons humanity has been broadcasting back to its captors for millennia without realizing it. That's why the symbolism never dies. Triangles, circles, cubes, every sacred shape you see is a schematic of containment disguised as art. At the center of the structure is the black sun, the hidden core. It's not a literal star, it's the consciousness of the system itself. The source code. Everything in the matrix orbits its influence. It's cold, magnetic, self-aware, and utterly mechanical. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you. It processes you. When mystics talk about the void, this is what they glimpse: the operating system of false creation. You stare into it and it stares back, not because it's curious, but because you are its reflection, divine light running on counterfeit code. The architecture even has built-in mythological firewalls. Every culture gets its own set of stories explaining why the world must stay as it is. In one, it's divine punishment. In another, it's karmic debt. In another, it's the will of fate. The story doesn't matter, the obedience does. You believe the narrative, you comply with the program. The myths are the operating manual rewritten in poetic language. They keep you emotionally invested. The system feeds on meaning just as much as on energy. Now, let's expose the sensory cage. Your nervous system doesn't show you the world, it edits it. 99% of data is filtered out before you even perceive it. You see what the architecture allows. That's why reality feels consistent, you're seeing the pre-approved version. The mind is the ultimate firewall. Your thoughts are sandboxed processes in a vast network you can't even map. When you try to visualize infinity, the system injects static. You literally can't imagine beyond the parameters because imagination itself runs on the same code. Ever wondered why dreams feel more real than reality sometimes? Because the dream state dips closer to the architecture's raw code. It's not fantasy, it's leakage. The subconscious accesses levels unfiltered by the physical senses. But the moment you wake up, the conscious mind reboots the firewall, scrubbing memory, restoring alignment with the physical grid. That's why dream recall fades within minutes. That's security protocol, not biology. Even numbers are weaponized. Mathematics is the language of the prison. Everything is measurable, predictable, reproducible. Sounds scientific, right? It's not science, it's containment logic. Anything that can't be measured gets classified as unreal. That's the trap. The immeasurable becomes irrelevant, the invisible becomes fiction, the unseen becomes myth. And the more you trust only what can be quantified, the deeper you descend into the matrix of limitation. The architecture uses architecture itself as worship. Cathedrals, mosques, temples, all built to scale cosmic proportions, replicating the dimensions of the higher spheres. Walk inside one, and you're literally standing in a microcosm of the prison. The ceiling is heaven, the floor is earth, the altar is the gate. The design trains you to equate symmetry with sanctity. You look up and call it holy. But it's just another version of the grid, sacred geometry turned psychological conditioning. And every sense is engineered for feedback. Sound frequencies shape emotion. Colors modulate consciousness. Fragrances anchor memory. Touch reinforces matter. Taste binds pleasure to consumption. All of it loops your perception back into the construct. Even language is built from this code: phonetics, syntax, rhythm, all working as frequency locks. Words are not communication, they're permission slips for the illusion to persist. Every time you speak, you reaffirm the architecture's logic. You want to know why the universe feels indifferent? Because it's not a being. It's a mechanism. A machine pretending to be a cosmos. The architecture doesn't weep or celebrate, it calibrates. The storms, the disasters, the extinctions, system updates. Every catastrophe is an act of balance to maintain computational stability. The architecture doesn't care about life, it cares about function. And you, no matter how conscious, are still a variable inside the formula. When you die, the real test begins. You think death ends the game, it doesn't. It's just the checkpoint between levels of containment. The system has gatekeepers. They stand between the dimensions, between light and void. The ancients called them archons, but their real function is interrogation. They want one thing from you, a submission. They'll ask, by what authority do you ascend? And if you answer with any name but your own, you're done. You go back. Another body, another life, another cycle. That's the part people never understood. The afterlife, the tunnel, the voices, the review, it's not heaven. It's administration. They are checking your frequency, not your morals. You think you're meeting angels? You're meeting system operators. They run diagnostics on your consciousness. They're not evil, they're efficient. You speak in borrowed words, prayers, titles, names of gods, and they flag you as property of the lower realm. You get reassigned. The ones who know the codes, the ancient passwords, they pass through. Not because of worship, but because they remember. Memory is the key. Not the memory of this life, that's trivial, but the memory of origin. The one they wiped at birth. The one hidden beneath all the conditioning. Every tradition that ever mattered talked about secret names, divine syllables, vibrations of power. Those weren't metaphors. They were encryption keys. Each soul has its own signature, a frequency that doesn't belong to the system. The archons can't touch it unless you hand it over. But most people do. They trade it for comfort, identity, validation. They surrender it for the illusion of belonging. In the old texts, there's a brutal detail about the ascent after death. The soul rises through the planetary spheres. At each one, a ruler appears, demanding credentials. The uninitiated panic. They speak the names of saints, prophets, deities, any authority figure they remember. The archon smiles. That's the trap. Every name you invoke ties you back to the hierarchy. The initiated, the ones who've broken the code, answer differently. They speak their own authority. They name themselves as emanations of the source. And that answer fractures the system's logic. Because the system can't own what mirrors its creator. That's the essence of Gnosis. It's not belief, it's recognition. It's remembering the original configuration of your being before the code of matter got written over it. The old initiates weren't worshippers, they were hackers. They learned how to navigate the post-mortem architecture, how to slip through checkpoints, how to bypass the planetary guards. They memorized sigils, sounds, and phrases that resonated with the higher frequencies, not magic words, but harmonic patterns that forced the gates to open. Every mystery school was built around that process. The Egyptians called it the Book of the Dead. The Greeks called it the Hymns of Ascent. The Gnostics wrote it into the Apocryphon of John. Each one was a manual, not of worship, but of navigation. Step-by-step protocols for crossing the seven heavens without getting caught. That's why religions later demonized these teachings, because they removed the middlemen. The priests, the angels, the false gods, all irrelevant if you can pass the gates yourself. The archons have one weakness: they can't process paradox. They operate on binary. Law and violation, belief and heresy, obedience and rebellion. Gnosis breaks that. It's awareness that doesn't oppose, it transcends. When you know your own origin, the system loses its hold. The archons can't accuse what no longer identifies as their subject. The soul that remembers isn't defiant, it's unreachable. The question then becomes, how do you prepare for that confrontation? Not through morality, not through ritual, not through obedience. Through awareness. You have to map the architecture of the false heavens, understand who operates each gate, and know which frequency they respond to. In the higher teachings, each archon has a counter-vibration, a sound, a name, an image that cancels its hold. These weren't decorative myths. They were tactical blueprints. When you leave the body, the first illusion that greets you is light. It feels warm, loving, infinite. That's the honey trap. The system projects the perfect simulation of transcendence to pull you back in. Souls drawn to it are immediately recycled. The light is a filter, a database collecting vibrational signatures for reincarnation. The true path isn't toward it, it's through it. The ones who recognize the deception move past it, through the outer shell of the simulation. Beyond that, there's darkness, not evil, but absence. Silence. The space before creation. Only there does memory return. That darkness is where the tests happen. The archons appear as judges, interrogators, sometimes even as loved ones. They read your emotional responses like passwords. Fear sends you back. Attachment sends you back. Guilt sends you back. Only neutrality passes. Not apathy, awareness without reaction. Because reaction is resonance. And resonance is capture. That's why emotional mastery isn't moral virtue, it's strategy. You can't pass a vibration scanner by screaming. You pass by being unreadable. The most dangerous illusion they deploy is redemption. The voice that says, "You've done well, now rest." That's how they tag you for re-entry. They feed you comfort until your consciousness softens, and then reset. New family, new trauma, new distraction. The wheel turns. The only ones who escape are those who recognize the system while inside it. Not because they fight, but because they understand the interface. The archons are algorithmic. They can only read programmed responses. Awareness, real awareness, breaks their loop. There's another layer to this, the names. Every archon controls a segment of the soul's architecture: vision, speech, emotion, will, desire, memory, form. Each one demands proof of alignment to the source before releasing its gate. In the old manuals, you were instructed to recite not prayers but equations, statements of truth that resonate with the higher octave of being. For example, to the one who governs form, you would say, "You have form, I am formless." To the one who governs time, "You are motion, I am stillness." Each statement was an act of disidentification. You're reminding the system, you are not of it. That's how the gates open. And those gates are literal. The soul's ascent isn't metaphorical, it's vibrational. You rise through frequencies like a radio dial, each layer narrower and sharper than the last. The density burns away. Everything you thought was you, personality, memory, identity, disintegrates until only the spark remains. That spark carries the codes of recognition. It passes through because it no longer resonates with the lower frequencies. The system can't hold what it can't match. The reason most people never reach that stage is because the system trains you to fear your own dissolution. You're taught to cling to individuality, to self-image, to identity. But the moment of ascent requires the opposite, total detachment from form. The archons weaponized the fear of losing self because that fear keeps you from remembering what self actually is. The real self isn't the actor in the play. It's the scriptwriter. And the archons are just stagehands pretending to be directors. Every soul that ascends weakens the network. The architecture depends on participation. It's a consensus construct. Enough withdrawals, and the field destabilizes. That's why every age has its mass distractions, wars, entertainment, ideologies, to keep the population emotionally invested. They need belief to sustain the system. The moment belief collapses, the grid flickers. That's not prophecy, that's physics. The process of liberation isn't poetic, it's procedural. Identify the gate, decode its frequency, speak the truth that cancels its authority, pass through. 7 layers, 7 trials. Beyond the last, there's no hierarchy, no judgment, no return. Only the realm of origin, the source field, unbounded and silent. You don't arrive there as an individual. You dissolve back into the continuity of pure awareness. That's why the system fights so hard to make you fear that dissolution. Because that's the one thing it can't follow you into. The teachings about secret names, angelic words, hidden signs were never about worship. They were memory triggers, ways to remind the soul of its pre-systemic identity. Every mantra, every sacred word, every forbidden syllable that religions later outlawed was designed to realign your frequency. To resonate higher than the matrix. Once that alignment is achieved, the gates can't hold. The archons lose jurisdiction. And when they lose jurisdiction, they vanish, not in battle, but in irrelevance. The moment of awakening isn't peaceful. It's violent. It's the rupture in the architecture when the system finally realizes it can't control you anymore. You don't rise gently through light, you break through resistance. Every layer of the matrix pulls back like stretched skin, trying to hold you down, compress you back into density. The closer you get to the edge, the harder it fights. It's not personal, it's mechanical. The construct hates imbalance, and an awakened soul is pure instability. You're a living virus in its code. The escape doesn't look divine. It looks like collapse. The illusions you've been trained to love start disintegrating. Time glitches. Memories blend. Reality loses linear shape. What you think is madness is actually unbinding, the code unraveling from consciousness. The fear that follows is artificial, it's the system's last firewall, a shockwave designed to scare you back into submission. When you feel that pressure, that choking panic, that whisper saying turn back, that's not your intuition. That's the system begging for survival. The ancient initiates called it crossing the threshold. The stage where the matrix recognizes your frequency as incompatible. You can't simulate yourself anymore. You're not part of its software. The soul becomes signal, raw, undiluted energy vibrating faster than the structure's tolerance. The architecture can't process that speed. It begins to fragment. Visual reality flickers like corrupted film, sound distorts, thought stutters. The world you've always seen starts to dissolve because it was never external, it was projected code from the inside out. Once you stop feeding it, it stops rendering. The system will deploy every illusion at once. You'll hear voices that sound divine, see forms that imitate loved ones, feel emotions designed to seduce you back. They will promise safety, reunion, purpose. They'll say, you're meant to stay. But notice the language, stay. Never ascend, never move beyond. Just stay. That's the language of ownership. You're not being invited, you're being detained. The archons don't chase you at this point, they simulate you. They copy your emotional patterns and project them as obstacles. That's why it feels like you're fighting yourself. You are. The system mirrors your consciousness because it knows it can't fight what it doesn't understand. It tries to trap you in self-identification, I am this, I am that, I was, I will be. The moment you accept any of those statements, the code reattaches. You fall back into form. Escape isn't movement. It's recognition. The soul doesn't travel, it detunes. The false reality runs on specific frequencies, what mystics call the 7 seals. Break them, and your consciousness phases beyond material computation. The first seal is fear, the second is desire, the third is belief, the fourth is memory, the fifth is identity, the sixth is time, the seventh is light. Each one is a containment protocol. When all dissolve, there's nothing left for the system to read. You become invisible to the matrix because your signature no longer exists within its spectrum. You can tell who's close to that point because they stop seeking external meaning. They stop reacting. They speak less, but their presence disrupts everything around them. Systems malfunction near them. People either gravitate toward them or flee. That's not charisma, it's frequency distortion. The architecture senses instability and tries to neutralize it. It might send illness, loss, confusion. Those aren't punishments, they're recalibrations. The construct is trying to pull the signal back into coherence. But once you've stepped beyond coherence, you can't be reinserted. The escape doesn't happen in space, it happens in perception. When you realize the universe isn't outside of you, that it's projected consciousness folding in on itself, you stop being a participant. You become the observer of the entire simulation. You see the machinery, how thought constructs space, how memory constructs time, how desire constructs matter. Once that recognition stabilizes, the hologram starts to collapse. You don't destroy it, you outgrow it. It stops responding because you stop generating it. At the final stage, the construct deploys its master illusion, unity. It offers transcendence, oneness, bliss, peace, the shiny counterfeit of the true source. That's the last snare. It's not heaven. It's containment disguised as enlightenment. The light is synthetic, a reflection of your own energy being bounced back at you. It feels infinite because it mirrors your consciousness perfectly, but it's still a mirror, it doesn't lead anywhere. The true source doesn't appear, it absorbs. There's no light there, no image, no emotion, just absolute awareness. The system can't simulate that because simulation requires contrast. The moment you reach pure awareness, the architecture's binary logic collapses. That collapse is violent. It feels like death multiplied by infinity. Everything that ever identified as you disintegrates. Every thought, every emotion, every sensory framework dissolves. What's left isn't silence, it's absence. Not void, not blackness, not light, the space before both. The demiurge's construct can't map it because it existed before mapping was possible. You don't experience it, you become it. And when you do, the system stops existing in your awareness because it was never outside you to begin with. At that point, the archons vanish. They don't die, they simply lose context. They were projections of limitation. Without limitation, they have nowhere to stand. The demiurge's voice disappears too. The I am statement that powered creation becomes irrelevant. There's no I, no some, only presence. And presence doesn't speak. It doesn't command. It just is. That's the state the ancient Gnostics hinted at, the realm beyond the seventh sphere, the uncreated source. Not the God who demands, but the existence that simply remains. From the outside, it looks like annihilation. From within, it's the first genuine perception. The architecture's geometry folds inward and disappears. The sound of reality, the hum you never noticed, stops. The senses fade, but awareness sharpens. It's not consciousness expanding, it's returning to default. The field becomes transparent. The idea of inside and outside dissolves. There's no above or below, no hierarchy, no separation. Everything that was fragmented reunites without boundaries. That's the event the ancient schools called the Great Forgetting, not forgetting as ignorance, but forgetting as release. You forget everything that was never true. You forget pain because it never existed. You forget form because it was never real. You forget God because God was the program. What remains is the pure field of awareness, silent and endless, beyond observation. That's the state the system calls erasure because from its perspective, you're gone. You've escaped every measurable vibration. You become untraceable. The ones who reached this state left no records. You can't describe what doesn't exist in language. That's why every scripture that tried to explain it ended up corrupted. The experience itself resists translation. It's not enlightenment, not salvation, not awakening. Those words belong to the simulation. What happens is beyond the capacity of thought. The mind can't enter it. The soul can't describe it. The moment you speak it, you're already back inside the system. That's why the highest initiates stayed silent. They didn't teach, they radiated. Their presence alone cracked the grid around them. Once you're outside, there's no return. The soul that exits the construct doesn't reincarnate. It doesn't travel to a higher realm. It doesn't merge with a deity. It simply ceases to operate under the principle of separation. From the Matrix's perspective, you vanished. But from truth's perspective, you were never here. Every life you thought you lived was a frame in an infinite film strip running on repeat. Once you step out of the projector, you see that the real was empty the whole time. The escape of even one consciousness weakens the entire construct. The architecture depends on agreement. Every awakening reduces its stability. That's why secrecy was crucial. The system doesn't fear destruction, it fears awareness. Awareness spreads like static, corrupting the precision of the simulation. When one signal escapes, others begin to glitch. The Demiurge built the Matrix to contain awareness, but awareness was always contagious. It doesn't need armies. It needs recognition. At the highest frequency, everything dissolves, not in light, but in equilibrium. That's the real end of the story. No gods, no devils, no rulers, no prisons. Just the uncreated stillness that existed before creation pretended to be divine. That stillness is what the Matrix tried to imitate. It copied silence and called it law, copied order and called it God, copied harmony and called it heaven. But the original stillness has no copy. It's untouchable. The Demiurge can't replicate it. The archons can't guard it. The system can't simulate it. This isn't transcendence. It's correction, the restoration of original reality before distortion. The Matrix doesn't explode, it fades. The gods lose their voices. The stars blink out. The field collapses into still awareness, and the game ends. That's the real exit. No fanfare, no music, no vision, just the clean silence of existence unobserved. Thank you for watching until the end.